And now to go deeper in the analysis of these elections in Costa Rica, we have with us international affairs analyst Aminta Zea. Good afternoon, Aminta.
Good afternoon.
Hi, thank you for joining us here from the South.
Thank you for having me on.
So, Aminta, despite the fact that Figueres led the polls with a 10% advantage over Chavez, experts and pollsters are giving a technical tie in the outcome of these elections. What can be the element that tips the scale in favor of either candidate?
Well, I think that with respect to both candidates, right, these runoff elections represent the continuity of the same neoliberal, sexist, and exclusionary model, right? We saw absentee votes up to 40%. Costa Ricans right now are feeling the dismal and challenging impacts, especially with their previous administration that has failed to really mitigate the harmful effects that the COVID-19 pandemic has taken upon on the Costa Rican economy. So with that being said, right, I think that with Figueres, you have a candidate, who was born into a family linked to a long political legacy. His father founded the PLN, the National Liberation Party, and served as president in the 1940s, 1950s, and 1970s. And because this is specifically a bourgeois election, this is not an election that is representative of working class Costa Ricans, right? We're talking about the 9th most unequal country in the world and has some of the highest income inequality out of all of the OECD countries. It's a country where their poverty levels reaches over 23% in households, and it has an extreme poverty rate of 6.3. So with that being said, when folks are going to the polls, we're going to go ahead and they're either choosing somebody that is linked to an oligarchic family. Figueres is somebody who also too was guilty of corruption charges, particularly in the Paradise Papers when he was CEO of the World Economic Forum from 2000 to 2004, where he received $900,000 from the French telecommunication firm Alcatel, and he used that money to bribe several Costa Rican politicians. And then on the other side, you have Chavez, right? A newcomer, right, per se, but this is somebody who too is representative of bourgeois interests. He was somebody who for a long time was a World Bank official and was removed particularly because of sexual harassment in the workplace since 2008 to 2013. This is somebody who supposedly was held accountable for their actions. Supposedly, he was demoted and his salary was frozen. But, at the end, he ended up returning to his native Costa Rica and was finance minister for Carlos Alvarado. So, these are both people that are representative of neoliberalism. They want to promote foreign trade, but really that just means expropriating the labor and the natural resources that are found in Costa Rica. And sadly enough, right, you don't really see a lot of mainstream media really illuminating, right, the contradictions between both of these candidates, illuminating that really in this election, although it might be validated by the OAS, it's not representative of actual working class ticos, right? And I think that regardless of which candidate wins, you're going to have to see a lot of mass mobilization that has been suppressed. Particularly, I believe the year before there was a passage of law 9635, which is an anti-strike law that criminalizes social protests in Costa Rica. And if you block a street for a protest, that's a criminal offense. So I think with all of this being said, you have these, again, bourgeois, neoliberal candidates that do not represent the people. And really, it can be an either or situation with this election, but the true contender will be the mobilization of the masses. It'll be, those that are most impacted by the array of human rights violations that do occur in Costa Rica, although they're not spoken about. The West lauds Costa Rica as this so-called Switzerland of Central America, and yet we see a plethora of social issues and problems.
Yeah, you're right. And as you were saying, Costa Rica is experiencing a lot of issues, both in social and in the economic part of the situation in the country. The foreign debt is over 2/3 of the nation's GDP. But if either candidate wins, what could their mandate possibly represent for the people of Costa Rica? Could any of these candidates, their programs, their agenda, could they possibly move forward the people to bring them out of this situation that they're living?
I think with both candidates, especially Chavez, he is somebody that wants to, and again, in a very neoliberal light, he is somebody that is wanting to cut social security contributions, increase austerity, but really in the end to augment foreign investment. This is somebody that recently in an interview said, oh, Bill Gates would have to go through so much red tape, and we want to really facilitate foreign investors in Costa Rica. But you and I both know, right, that this it is not positive impacts for working class ticos. This is something that will, I think, with both Chavez and Figueres, we're going to go ahead and see massive privatization, specifically of hospitals. For example, I believe that Figueres was really campaigning on privatizing hospitals, privatizing education even further, also making it more difficult for people to have access to water, electricity, internet. All of these things are aiming to be privatized so that they can have more foreign investment, so that it can be a playground for foreign investors and also domestic elites. And so with that being said, right, I don't think that either candidate is going to be able to really uplift the Costa Rican people. Neither candidate has really spoken about increasing wages. Specifically, too, neither candidate has talked about ensuring that workers in the informal sector, which currently, is at around 47%, that they have access to labor rights, and they have access to essential resources. So I think what we'll really end up seeing is a tipping point. Granted, we saw a tipping point with the teachers' strike that occurred in the previous year. However, and obviously that had a negative impact with the anti-strike law. But with that being said, I think that ticos, especially in rural areas that go oftentimes dismissed, we're talking about people in the campesinado, right? Peasant farmers, these are people that have to find and innovate different ways to really mobilize, especially with people in the city. We're talking about students. I think a lot about, for progress, we have Frente Amplio, right? The party Frente Amplio, it's a social democratic party that did obtain 6 seats in the legislative elections. And that is the largest amount of seats that they've been able to achieve. And so I think that, the push to the left in Costa Rica is going to be particularly challenging because it really does operate as a neo-colony. It is so deeply impacted by imperialism and by neoliberal economic policy. But I do remain hopeful, especially when we see, what are the neighboring countries in Central America experiencing? We have Nicaragua with their successful re-election of Daniel Ortega, and the ways in which they've been able to mitigate, the COVID-19 pandemic, and they've been able to handle sanctions and coup attempt in 2018. We see Honduras, for example, with the election of Xiomara Castro, really taking an end to those 12 years of narco dictatorship. So for the isthmus as large, although each country has its own particularities, I think that ticos, with time, with organization, with international solidarity, they'll be able to really contend with the unfortunate and at times very enraging amounts of social inequality that is found in the country right now.
Thank you, Amita. For good reason, the voter turnout is being so low. Well, thank you for your time and for sharing your input here with us From the South.
Thank you so much for having me on.
No, it was our pleasure. Well, we're going to continue providing latest updates in this current election that is going on in Costa Rica.